Vladimir Putin has his eye on the reconstruction of the Russian Empire. You already know that for him, Moscow was the victim of a kind of geopolitical trick and deception provoked by the West following the fall of the Soviet Union with the intention of annihilating its power and influence. This is something the Kremlin now has to fix. Even so, it's not that simple. In Ukraine, Putin has barely managed to add some 100,000 square kilometers to his new empire. That may sound like a lot, but it's barely 0.6% of Russia's area. Be that as it may, the issue of Russian borders may soon be put on the back burner, because these days, Mother Russia has a much more pressing problem.
Russia's birth rate plunges to 200-year low. According to demographer Alexei Raksha, the first quarter of 2025 likely saw the lowest number of births since the early 1800s, with February marking the lowest monthly figure in over 200 years. Putin urges Russians to have more kids, says ethnic survival at stake.
The falling birth rate is certainly a global problem, but
Yeah.
So let's look this up. Russia birth rate, right? 1.42. I mean, that's not too bad. When we
Compared to other places, right? It's not
let's
that
look at
bad.
South Korea, 0.78. So hey, all things considered, it's not too bad. It's pretty much double of South Korea's.
Let's try my place. Let's try my place. 1.5.
Denmark.
1.5.
Yeah, it's literally double of South Korea's. Right, let's get back. Exactly 1 minute. 3, 2, 1.
Russia is below average on almost all indicators of demographic development. Vladimir Putin does not want, and it's probably not even feasible, to build an empty empire. So he's sparing no expense in this matter. In recent weeks, the Kremlin has announced an investment of $790 million to boost the birth rate. And let's see, at first glance, it may not seem like a lot of money, but keep in mind that we're talking about a country currently at war and with a huge budget gap. That they are considering these things at a time like this tells us a lot about how important this is to them. In fact, it's an issue that the Russian government has called nothing less than life and death for the development and expansion of the motherland.
Just take a look at what Austrian painter done. Go into debt and then just destroy
Russian cities are littered with giant billboards asking women to get their act together to give birth as soon as possible. This is what the Russian government considers the duty of Russian women.
Make sure that Russia has a brighter future. We need to have more Russians. I'm talking, of course, about the increasing number of families with multiple children.
Let's be clear. Talking about demographics in Russia essentially means talking about a deep-seated crisis that is now becoming more and more visible. Among other reasons, because this country has lost tens of thousands of men on the Ukrainian front, while its fertility rate has plummeted to historic lows. And if we add to this the fact that since 2022, about 750,000 people.
The wildest thing about it is that we're talking about two countries. I know I'm gonna fucking get hated for this, but they're literally identical. Like, there's
Not much difference between them.
Bro, like Russian and Ukrainian people, they're literally the fucking same. Like, historically, genetically, in all fucking meaning of the word, they're literally the same. It's like you fighting your brother. It's like, congrats, you're retarded. You're fighting your own people, and that's the wildest thing of it all. You're not actually gaining anything from this.
Nothing. But at the same time, Putin says something about we need more people.
And then you go and
who the fuck wanted? Who do you want? Like, how can you ask women or men or generally parents to have multiple children if those children have a chance to go to war right after? Is this what you're gonna do? Like, tell them to, can you make more children so I can use them as my
it's literally cannon fodder.
Literally cannon fodder. There's nothing gained. The only downside here is the families of the men. They're gonna make of the children. They're gonna parents are gonna lose their sons in the war for no apparent reason at all. Literally no reason at all.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that the parent of the families here just doesn't have any kids, because you should not have any.
1.42 is still pretty good for today's standards.
That is completely fine. That is, but like you wouldn't want to have kids in a doomed world, right?
Of course not.
Never, right? And this is how I think people see it right now. If I have a son right now, there's a small chance. There's a small now. I don't even know if there's a small anymore. But that the kid gonna go to fucking war. I don't want that. So I'm glad they're doing something. But in Russia, you cannot be open about it. You cannot have some kind of demonstration in the town. You know what's going to happen if you do that. At least this is something you can do. You cannot force impregnate people. Can you do that in Russia right now?
Look at China and see how that goes, right? But for now, no, obviously no.
No, maybe at some point, if it happens that there will come some kind of forced impregnation camp or something, this is where it becomes really fucked. But right now, I'm just happy that Russian people at least do something about. At least, I'm a bit sad that they cannot start a family because they're afraid. But I don't know. Other than that, you cannot do anything.
I mean, they can start a family. It's just not really going to be a long-living family. Let's be real here.
And you're only going to have women, right? And hopefully those women don't make any child after. But then your bloodline is just going to stop anyway.
Oh well.
Doesn't matter what you do.
Let's continue. 223. 3, 2, 1.
People have left the country. The conclusion is clear. The pace of emptying is a critical hiccup for Putin's imperial plans. And remember, it's not just us saying this. This is basically what Vladimir Putin himself is repeating. But what plans does the Kremlin have to reverse this population tragedy? What is behind Russia's plummeting birth rate? What implications do war and economic stagnation have for this problem? To what extent does all this inconvenience Putin's imperial plans? Well, today we're going to talk about all this and more. Stay tuned. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you heard of the 14 Eyes Alliance? It's an international agreement between countries like the US, UK, Canada, Germany, and others, allowing their governments to collect and share internet user data with each other. In simple terms, your online activity can be monitored without your consent and potentially used against you. So, is there a way to avoid this kind of surveillance? Yes. By using a VPN.
There you go.
Not just any VPN. You need one that's reliable, secure, and based outside the 14 Eyes Alliance. That's where CyberGhost v CyberGhost. CyberGhost is the ultimate tool for protecting your privacy online, not just from governments, but also from hackers and cybercriminals. It's headquartered outside the 14 Eyes countries, and unlike many VPNs, it actually keeps no logs of your activity. So just open CyberGhost VPN before you browse, and no one will be able to track your online activity. You get full privacy.
You were saying?
I'm talking about, doesn't FBI or something have some kind of like access to this?
Oh yeah, the VPNs don't stop the actual government. This is just fake news for you to get past basically basic levels of like when you're in China, you can go on YouTube, right? It's not actually gonna protect you from criminal activity. Like, bro, if they can get the guy who made Silk Road, and he took great care to not get caught. They can definitely catch you when you use fucking CyberGhost or NordVPN.
Exactly. You did send me that thing. Do you remember yesterday when I told you about if it's true that FBI? Yes, exactly. We should watch that after. And then we should watch that right after. Okay, let's continue.
3, 2, 1.
Fast, it's super easy to use, it's trusted by over 38 million users, and has an excellent rating on Trustpilot. Plus, it blocks ads and malware, while still giving you all the classic VPN perks, like bypassing geo-restrictions on streaming platforms or accessing websites blocked by governments. And here's the best part. By using the link in the description, you are getting a special offer. It's just €2 and 3 cents a month, and you can connect up to 7 devices. If you share your account with friends or family, it's basically 30 cents per person for full online privacy. That's not bad for less than the price of a coffee, right? If you want to try CyberGhost and support our channel at the same time, we'd really appreciate it. Just use the QR code on the screen or the link in the description. And don't worry, there is a 45-day money-back guarantee. So if it's not for you, no problem. You've got nothing to lose by giving it a shot. Just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below.
Thank you, NordVPN.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yes, the national
During the second half of the 20th century, more than 400,000 Soviet women were decorated with the title of Mother Heroine, an award created by Joseph Stalin himself at the end of 1944 to reward all those mothers who provided the Soviet Union with 10 births. You can buy one of those at the time. Moscow was urgently looking for a way to compensate for the millions of casualties the country suffered during World War II. Be that as it may, this odd way that the Soviet homeland had to honor its mothers disappeared with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1992. That is, until 30 years later, in 2022, when Vladimir Putin revived it.
Vladimir
like
Putin to award
WoW
1 million
Classic.
rubles to hero mothers who have 10 or more children. Under the decree, eligible mothers will
great
receive
things
a
make a
one-time
re-
payment of 1 million
Physical-
rubles, equivalent to $16,000 when their 10th living child turns 1.
The return of the heroine mothers to modern Russia tells us a lot about the critical moment this country's demographics are going through. And while in general this is a widespread problem among countries around the world, Russia's situation is among the worst. Take a look.
I mean, all things
By
considered,
the
it's not a bad
mid-1980s,
idea
Russia
to
reported a
promote
fertility
motherhood,
rate
right?
far higher
I mean,
than
right
that
now
of
we're
major
promoting
European
OnlyFans.
countries, even surpassing that of the
Let's
United
stop it here.
States.
Stop it here.
However,
Sure.
The thing about I just feel it weird that you get rewarded for having children, because this is this is happening a lot right now, right?
Yeah, there's a
If you
lot of
have
social
multiple-
programs.
a lot of things like it. I think it was in wasn't it South Korea that if you have multiple, you have tax exemptions or something like that.
Yeah, you have
to
tax
pay less
exemptions,
in-
and same with Hungary now, and most countries overall just give you money, like monthly child allowance and all that stuff.
Exactly,
And none
I
of it
think
really
this-
work. They just get consumed
No.
into the general like economy
No.
of the things.
Exactly, because there's some people don't want to have kids because you know it's too
Yeah,
expensive.
double
but
income,
some
no kids.
Yeah, and some don't want to have kids because they don't have the time for it, because some people are working like how in in Japan, North Korea, and in Korea, South Korea,
North
and
Korea
China.
too.
That is in South Korea, in Japan, and in China, you work like stupid amount of hours.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
how you gonna have your kid? How you gonna have your kids? Of course, you have your grandparents that generally try to force you to have kids, but
It doesn't
it's not the
really
same.
work either.
No, it doesn't really
Like,
work.
you definitely get told, oh yeah, when are you gonna have grandkids? Gramps, I'm still living with my parents. What do you mean grandkids? I am the kid.
Yeah, right. So I think that I think it's going to happen more and more in different around the countries, that the government has to do something, intensify to have multiple kids, because you can see in every single statistic that is Western, it just goes
That's
straight
going
down.
down. Yeah.
It's going down. But if you look at where should we look in Africa, in India, and other like the way those birth rate is.
They're up, but remember, it's third world problem, right? The richer the country gets, the less children it has, because it becomes urbanistic, and then everyone moves to the big cities, and in big cities you cannot really have kids. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So now we're kind of just waiting for the end of century for most of us to die out, and then our great-great-grandchildren will have like 20 houses each. I mean, that's pretty much what's going to happen, because no one else is there to like collect all the houses. Like, they're going to be here, right, after we all die. Like, look at Japan. The house mortgage rate in Japan is literally 1%, even after COVID, while the rest of the world is like 7-10%. Like,
well, wasn't that you could buy like really some houses for like extremely cheap too in Japan right now?
Even for free, as long as you renovate them and you're willing to live in them, the thing itself is free.
That is crazy.
I mean, that shows exactly where the world is going to head, especially in the West.
But I wonder if it's going to happen in our countries too, in Europe, and where the government is like, yo, if you.
In UK, it's going to take longer, obviously, because of forced immigration and stuff. But Denmark, Poland, 100%.
Yeah, it's probably going to happen at some point. Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
3, 2, 1.
The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, along with the ensuing economic and political crisis, marked the beginning of a long decline. And so, during the second decade of the 21st century, fertility data in Russia was on par with that of most developed countries. However, now all sources reveal a massive drop following the invasion of Ukraine.
Nowadays,
Fertility rates in Russia have fallen to 1.4 children per woman, while in some major cities there is barely one birth per woman. This is far below the replacement fertility rate, which is usually calculated at 2.1. And if we take into account the consequences of the war, you can imagine the result. In 2024, overall, 500,000 more deaths than births were registered in Russia. However, if we're talking about demographics in Russia, we have to take into account three aspects that are often overlooked. Let's see. We all know that Putin is, in social terms, a staunch conservative and supposedly a staunch defender of the traditional family. So, as a result, his diagnosis is largely based on the thinking that women, having changed their social and economic expectations, are no longer as committed to Mother Russia. But do you know what? It's probably better if you listen to his own words.
Why would they be?
First, a young woman wants to get an education, then a postgraduate degree, then take the first steps in the career. This is called postponing the first child. For the second child, there is neither strength nor time to ensure the growth of the family. Population should be formed at an earlier age.
What Putin forgets is that his government is also not making it any easier for women in a country that is even experiencing a growing crisis of domestic violence.
This is everywhere.
Yeah, it's just everywhere.
And the thing is, in 2017, the Russian legislature pushed for the decriminalization of several crimes related to violence against women, or so-called intra-family violent acts. For example, in those cases where the physical aggression does not leave serious damage or is systematic, the punishment is a simple fine, equivalent to that of a traffic infraction. And we're talking about a country where an estimated 12,000 women die each year as a result of this type of violence, and where less than half of the victims dare to denounce their aggressors precisely because of the laxity of the law. On top of all this, we have to add the serious problems that the Russian population continues to suffer, a country that is, by far, one of the highest consumers of alcohol per capita in the world, which, logically, has a lot of social consequences, among them many more cases of domestic violence. And if the situation was already critical since the invasion of Ukraine was launched, things have gone from bad to worse.
Russia faces spike in crime and alcoholism as war nears 2-year mark. Rostat noted a rapidly growing number of patients suffering from alcoholism and alcoholic psychosis.
And that's not all. Since 2022, many serious cases of violence against women have ended in commutations of sentences for the accused in exchange for their enlistment in the Russian armed forces. The result of all these changes, Russia is not exactly a particularly women-friendly country. And for many experts, this situation of increasing vulnerability is related precisely to the drop in Russian women's appetite for starting new families. But let's continue.
Let's talk about this.
Putin
about
longs
the women.
for a great Russian empire.
Pause it. If Putin wants to have more people in his country, blah blah, because
every country wants that, obviously.
Yeah, but him saying that, when you look at the statistic about how women getting treated and stuff, why are you not doing something about that first instead of just saying, you know what, women just make more children? You haven't said anything about that, because I looked at it a bit, because this is not only where in we did also look about it in you sent me a couple of days ago about how women have been treated in different countries, and you saw how example Turkey was and Denmark. Do you remember that?
Mm.
Yeah. If you look at how women are getting treated, and at the same time, I see how the more educated women gets, they just generally want to at least, with the time they spend on education, at least want to work first, then do maybe family after. But at the same time, also have to think about these educated women has to understand that how women getting treated in a family, because he literally said women getting treated really badly in that country. Of course, women don't want to have kids at this point. There's so many reasons now in Russia, personally, war, bad treatment in family. There's no punishment if something happens. Also in Turkey, in Denmark, at least you can get fucked if you really are in a bad, but still that is not enough to just say, you know what, just have children. Because this is what Putin is saying right now.
It doesn't even work either way.
How would you do it? What would you do if you were Putin right now? Of course, let's say it would be crazy if you say that you are like Putin, but how would you have children to make more children? Because I don't see a way to.
The thing is, because the base structure for having children is fucked. The family system, the family unit itself, was always communal, right? Do you even know your neighbors' names? Because I sure don't, and I talk to them. How do you know, societies and families to form when we don't even know who the hell lives behind, next door to us, literally wall to wall? 20, 30 years ago when we were growing up, I'm pretty sure your neighborhood looked a lot different. Kids were outside, you had some random granny looking through the window, making sure everything's fine. Bro, now the only thing that comes from a window is probably a rock by some random teenager. There's definitely not some granny watching over the neighborhood anymore, right? The concept of community is gone. So, and if the concept of the community is gone, why in the hell would you care about having kids? Because you know they're gonna suffer, they're gonna have a shit life. They don't have a community, they don't have anywhere to grow up. And
Would you say community also could be online instead of? Could community be online for the kids, not for the boomers, but the kids? Because for us, we different. But my brother, he was born in 2000. 95% of his friends are from online. His friends generally, his friends are online. Would you say that is a community too?
I feel like that's a fake community. Like,
Fake
I
community?
mean, when you're older, then it doesn't really matter because you're a boomer anyway at that point, like 20, 30, whatever. But when you're growing up, just like when you're 12, for example, and the only people you know are on the internet, that's not healthy.
No.
You'll be literally like forced to stay home, and I mean, your life is just going to be shit. Like, why would you go outside if you don't have any friends to begin with, right?
Yeah, there's no reason. Yeah, if you don't have real life friends, there's no reason to waste your time outside. If all your friends are already at the PC, right? At least then you can at least do something with your fake friends. I don't know if you could call it real friends or fake friends. At least if you have a community, you know people from online, you can spend time with them. But if you don't have real life friends, there's no point in going outside anyway. Nobody goes to bar anymore. Nobody goes to the disco anymore. It's completely empty in my town. In my town, I went to the bar once, and everybody is above 35,
Basically,
maybe
the
40.
loss of third spaces. I was like, the first is your home, second is your work, and the third is literally everywhere else, like pubs, clubs, libraries, all that stuff. You don't meet anyone anywhere. If you don't meet someone at work or Tinder, you're not meeting them anyware, right? And if you're not even meeting anyone, how are you to start a family? Like, what the fuck?
Well, at least
you saw the most recent thing that I sent you. 65% of people
65%
nowadays meet online. That's fucking terrible. And we're not just talking friends, we're talking about actual relationship dating. So if you don't meet someone basically on Tinder or a dating app, you're staying single for life. So how the fuck are you supposed to even start a family? Even
and also
everything is perfect. You have a house, you have money, you have a great community. If you cannot meet the other person, there is not going to be a kid.
No, not really. Because like also how selective Tinder is, but it is a whole different topic.
That's a whole different topic.
Yeah. We can dive into that later. Like, let's continue.
3, 2, 1.
For Russians, the problem is that his definition of Russians is increasingly restrictive. The 21st century Tsar is obsessed with ethnic survival. The campaign to promote the birth rate is quite generous in economic terms, but it's aimed mainly at urban centers, where the population of ethically Russian origin is more numerous. And here, visual politic community, we need to remember that Russia is a nation of nations.
Russia is a country composed of Slavic Russians, who are considered ethnic Russians, but also millions of Tatars, Bashkirs, Chuvash, Chechens, and many other groups with their own identities.
In fact, in rural areas and among the non-Slavic population, the birth rate is much higher. The problem is that this is not the birth rate that Moscow wants. Among other reasons, because the non-Russian population already accounts for 30%, and in the Kremlin, there is fear that in a few decades, the Slavs will not even be a majority in a country that will be increasingly Muslim.
1/3 of Russia will be Muslim within 15 years, Grand Mufti predicts.
Put another way, if Russia's demographic problem is already significant, the problem of the Slavic population, which is of most concern to the Kremlin, is much greater. But let's go on. The fall in births is a general problem throughout the West, although in other countries there is one factor that helps to mitigate its consequences, at least for now. I am talking, of course, about immigration. And not surprisingly, in this respect, the situation in the Kremlin is also in trouble. Look at this.
After the dissolution of the USSR, Russia reported negative migration. That is, more people began leaving the country than were entering. However, between 1995 and 2004, several schemes financed with oil money to encourage a return to a much more stable motherland achieved some results. Even so, the results were limited.
As you can probably imagine, Putin's Russia is not a destination that springs to mind when a person thinks about emigrating. Most of its immigrants come from Central Asian countries. So what's the problem? Well, after the terrorist attack on the Crocus City Hall concert hall in Moscow in March 2024, the Russian government launched a witch hunt. The result? Russia deported more than 80,000 foreigners, almost double the 2023 records, which naturally has further spurred demographic problems. Problems that are becoming a dead end for a country that is consuming its resources in war and that has not known known prosperity for years. In other words, for a country that has the same problems, or even worse than those of developed countries, but without having their resources. That is why Putin is so obsessed.
We have to take care of the people, increase the birth rate, create conditions for people to form large families, to make it viable to have many children, like in the old days in the USSR when families had 9 or 10 children.
It seems that the empire that...
Yep.
So this is honestly like, there is some truth to that back in the good old days of USSR, if we can even call it, right? What I didn't notice around the world was a lot of construction, right? They were building houses literally like a block a day, right? The entire cities literally just showed up out of nowhere. Like after World War II, the entire Europe was basically just dust, and suddenly we got cities. For the past 20 years, when I've been living in UK, right? Within my area, I've seen maybe 2 streets built, and they've been building them for literally 20 years. Like, how the
milking money from the government.
How the fuck do you build entire cities, literally block after block, like entire countries basically? And now ever since like the year 2000, you're struggling to build a single house, and when you do, it costs literally like $500,000. Like, what the fuck just went wrong? Like that. So there is that thing. It's like they built quick, they built cheap, they built fast, and suddenly now it's all fucking gone. And that's honestly also causing the problem with housing, because we were building at a very fucking good speed. Yes, sure, not all of those houses were in great conditions, but you could renovate, right? You cannot renovate if you do not have a house to renovate.
There's no reason to. But also, I think that it's so different now to build, because like you said that it takes a long time to build something.
Long time, regulations, all that crap.
All the bureaucratic shit. And also, I feel like it's wrong to say, but I feel like sometimes there's like some kind of corruption.
Oh, 100%, bro.
Right? Like, let's be honest, because nothing should take that long.
No. Especially when you proved you can build an entire country from nothing, literally nothing, in like a decade or 2. And now you're struggling to build not even a town or a village, a fucking street in 2 decades.
It's because like if let's go to another country. Let's just take the obvious one, China.
Yeah,
we have trophy drakes. They have trophy drakes. Yes, but their homes, they can build homes, but of course those homes are pretty shit quality, right?
But at least there is a house. Right, their official statistics is they build 3 times more houses than there are people in the country.
Exactly.
If they slowed it down a bit and made it better, then everyone would win. But you know how it goes. However, in the West, it's literally the opposite. Yeah, they're great quality houses. Well, actually, no, not even now. No, since they started building.
At least better than the rest. Let's just say
livable. Like they're gonna survive until like your retirement age, right? It's not tofu drag construction like in China.
Yeah,
but
it is true.
I don't know, man. It takes way too long for the quality that you get. And that's just pretty much ramping up the prices of itself.
Well, there's so many. Yeah, it's just that the ramping up. It costs so much to build a house. And all the bureaucratic shit makes up the price. The location of the house increases the price, because location really matters somehow. Because people generally want to live in the close or into the city, and when it goes like that. You can buy a house. You can get a house if a house exists. It is. The thing is, like, if you want to have a house that is close to a city where you want to live, because maybe you have a job because if I wanted to work like an hour away from, I wanted to find a house close to it.
Of course.
People here in Denmark. Exactly, from my dad. He has to drive he takes a train every single day an hour in 20 minutes to work. Not everybody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. No, not 95% want to do that. So if government just took it a bit more slowed down and said that, come on, let's at least make the house cheap. So not cheap, at least payable. Because right now, I don't think I can buy a house. I don't think I can buy a house for a while. It's so expensive right now.
The thing is, when you do build them, they don't even always get rented. Like I told you, in Warsaw, a city of 1.5 million, there's 150,000 houses which are unoccupied because people refuse to rent them to others. It's not even that they're like they're not being built is that when they are built, they are not being rented because the developer just consumes it into investment portfolio. So literally 10% of the city is unoccupied. So it's like...
And also the last part before we continue is like also where the people outside the country is buying your houses. There's also that.
Yeah.
Like buy houses, that is a problem. I feel like at least I don't know how much it happening in Denmark right now. At least we know that it happens in the United States. It happens in Turkey. In Turkey, it happened because my friend has a house in Turkey. He bought. I don't feel like it's bad or something, but if people outside the country can buy your houses, it feels wrong. I think people that live in that country should be.
I do agree to some extent. Like, it's not even about immigration, right? If you're a foreigner, I believe you still should be able to buy a house in a said country, but you should be living in the said country, right?
Yes, exactly. That is my point.
Yeah. So BlackRock chilling in fucking New York is not buying a bunch of houses in Zimbabwe without ever even setting foot in Zimbabwe.
Exactly.
Right. Let's go. 3, 2, 1.
That this neo-czar has in mind works more in his mind than in real life. And to top it all off, there's this other problem.
Life expectancy in Russia is one of its greatest contemporary failures. In Europe, the United States, and even China, people live 5 to 10 years longer. However, Moscow's record is very poor, even in contrast to other, much less developed regions, such as Latin America. Indicators on alcoholism, heart disease, and smoking are extremely high in Russia.
And then, on top of all that, while Putin is spending money on war, he hasn't been able to promote a healthcare system that is capable of meeting minimum standards. Essentially, healthcare in Russia is an urban luxury. Obviously, all this has another very significant consequence. And experts are saying that, if current demographic indicators continue, the last great wave of military-age men will disappear in 12 to 15 years. In other words, that Putin's widespread compulsory military service scheme has its days numbered. So this is how things stand in the country, facing a particularly intense demographic crisis, which in itself could be a huge one given its enormous ambitions. But having said that, this is a more or less widespread problem. So the question is, how would you fix it? What action would you take? Leave us your ideas in the comments and let's get the discussion rolling. And once again, a big thank you to CyberGhost for sponsoring this video. For just €2.03 a month, you get full protection for your data and unrestricted access to blocked content around the world. Remember, you can try it completely risk-free thanks to their 45-day money-back guarantee. And by signing up, you're also helping support our content. And very important, if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to Visual Politic if you haven't already done so. Take care. See you soon.
Okay, you were saying?
I feel sorry for the Russian people, but I don't really feel sorry for the government from Putin and stuff because, like,
no one does.
I hope that, like, one day, I guess, Putin disappears.
Someone else is gonna take his place. We had Lenin, we had Stalin, we had Gorbachev. We're gonna have.
I will agree with you.
The essence of Russia, really, to have a dictator. That's literally like their entire being, their essence. You cannot have Russia without having a dictator. It's impossible.
Who do you have any idea who's gonna be the next Putin?
No, because they're probably not even born yet.
You expect Putin to... How old is Putin right now?
He's like probably 60s or 70s, but I don't expect him to be gone anytime soon.
Yeah, if he doesn't go down himself, and there's
even when he does, like, it doesn't matter because someone from the oligarchs will just take his place. Yeah. But that place is never going to be democratic. Neither is USA or Europe. Let's be real. But yeah.
I hope if it continues like that, I wonder but if it continues like that, it's gonna be like a kingdom without anybody, right? It's gonna be like that.
That's basically the entire world, is it not? Like, we're just basically gonna reverse like 200 years of like population growth.
Something about that. If birthright doesn't increase, at least it's gonna be no people.
Why would it?